A little black girl with no home and no family walks into a hospital and claims she knows why a billionaire's son is dying. No one believes her, until a nurse notices something in her eyes that makes him pause. Hours earlier, Diana Witherspoon was just another lost face in the park, feeding ducks and staying out of sight. Now, she's at the center of a life-or-death crisis that could tear apart one of the most powerful families in the city. But when a child from the streets says a rich boy was poisoned, who's going to listen? Diana Witherspoon didn't blink when the woman called her trash. She just stared, calm as stone, from her spot on the low brick wall near the public bathrooms. Her legs swung slow. One shoe was missing. The other was 2 sizes too big. She clutched a stained book to her chest, a hardcover about birds, pulled from a library cart 2 weeks ago. Her stomach growled loud enough to draw glances from joggers. She ignored them too. "Go back where you came from," the woman had hissed earlier, when Diana reached for a half-eaten sandwich left on a bench. "Filthy little thing." Diana didn't move, didn't speak, didn't curse her. She just watched, because that's what she did best. Watch and remember. That morning she had eaten a bruised banana from a church box and sipped water from a leaking fountain. She hadn't spoken to anyone all day. Her voice had begun to feel like dust in her throat. Until she saw the boy. She saw him before anyone else did. He came skipping alongside the tall woman in red heels, his hand wrapped tightly in hers. His blonde curls bounced in the sunlight like something from a fairy tale. The woman's dress was cream. Her sunglasses were wide, her lips red like polished glass. And when she smiled down at him, her voice dropped low like a secret. Diana leaned forward, watched closely. "Leo, sweetheart," the woman cooed, her hand brushing his curls. "Don't wander off. We need to stay on schedule." They passed the old carousel. Diana slipped off the wall and trailed behind, silent, careful. Her feet padded soft against the path. The woman didn't notice. Diana kept her distance, 10, maybe 12 feet back. She stayed behind benches, slid under tree branches, ducked behind trash cans. She'd done this before, not to hurt people, just to understand them. Adults were puzzles. If you watched long enough, the pieces started to click. At the fountain, the woman answered her phone. She tugged Leo closer and looked around. Diana stopped dead. The woman's eyes passed right over her and didn't stop. "Tonight, after dinner," the woman whispered into the phone. "He'll be asleep by then." Her voice changed. Diana noticed it immediately, like someone reading a line from a script, polished, clean, cold. No, he won't feel a thing. It'll look natural. That's the whole point, isn't it?" A pause. "Yes. James will sign it. He has no choice. Once it's done, the shares move, and then Whitaker Systems is mine." Dinah's breath hitched. The woman paused. "Of course, he's only a child." Then she laughed. It was that laugh that did it. Something in it. Like ice breaking. Like the moment a lie slips into the world and dares someone to catch it. Diana backed away behind a sycamore tree, knees trembling. She stared down at the boy, still clinging to the woman's hand, pointing up at pigeons without a care in the world. "Leo." The woman called him Leo. Diana pulled the book tighter against her chest. Her fingers were shaking. Not from cold. From rage. From knowing what no one else would believe. Because she'd heard this kind of voice before. Not the exact words, but the venom behind them. The grown-up games that made kids into pawns. That's what they did to her. And now this woman was doing it to him. She followed them all the way back to the curb. The car was black and gleaming. It looked like something from a rich person's dream. The driver opened the door. The woman helped Leo inside. She kissed him on the forehead like she hadn't just plotted to ruin him. The license plate read WY8R55. Diana whispered it over and over to herself until it burned into her mind. The driver glanced her way for half a second. She froze, but then he turned back to the wheel, like she didn't exist. Like always. That was when she ran. Not home. There was no home. Not back to the park bench. No. She ran to the only place she thought someone might listen. Mercy General Hospital sat like a castle of cold glass and concrete. She'd been kicked out of the ER lobby twice before for sitting too close to the vending machines, but this time she didn't stop. She waited until a man pushing a laundry cart left the delivery door cracked, and she slipped in behind a crate of linens. And then sirens. Voices. Chaos. She followed the noise. A nurse shouted something about cardiac collapse. Diana's ears perked. She ducked under a wheeled tray. Another nurse passed. Behind her, a man with gray at his temples barked orders like machine gun fire. And there, on a trauma bed, was Leo, thrashing, lips pale, machines screaming. Standing at the edge of the bed was the man from the newspapers, James Whittaker, founder, innovator, billionaire, a face Diana had only seen in crumpled magazines. Now his hands were shaking, his eyes wide with panic. Diana's feet moved on their own. She stepped past a tray of gloves and into the chaos, her small figure swallowed in blue gowns and harsh lights. "I can save your son," she said. No one turned at first, so she said it louder. "I can save him." Now they turned. The nurse dropped a vial. The sound cracked through the tension. Head spun toward her. This small, dirty girl in mismatched shoes and a ripped coat. Her hair was frizzed, her eyes wild. A doctor stepped forward. "Dr. Lena Rowe. Where are your parents?" "Don't have any," Diana said, fists clenched. "But I know what's happening." "You need to leave." "She poisoned him," Diana blurted. "The woman, his nanny, she gave him something." Everyone stopped moving. Whittaker looked at her like she was a ghost. "She said it works slow, only when all the pills are taken together," Diana said, breathing fast. "She said it would look like a heart problem, but she planned it. I heard her." Dr. Rowe blinked. "What woman?" "I don't know her name. But she called him Leo. She wore red lipstick and high heels. She's trying to take your company. She said she'd get you to sign something and then you wouldn't matter anymore." Silence. The machines kept beeping. Finally, Nurse Ben Carter stepped forward. "Doctor, his symptoms. They don't fully match infection. What if—" Dr. Rowe looked between them. "Run a tox screen," she said sharply. "Wide net. Check for cardiac disruptors, slow-release agents. Move." Nurses scrambled. Diana stood still, her chest rising and falling like a drum. James Whittaker knelt beside her. "What else did you hear?" he asked softly. Therese looked him in the eye. Her voice didn't shake. "By morning," she said. "She said she'd own everything." James didn't speak. He closed his eyes. And for the first time since Diana could remember, someone believed her. Diana never meant to be this deep in anything. Most days she floated. That's how she survived. Float through the morning, slip through the noise. She'd learned long ago that keeping your head down could keep you alive, but today was different. Her feet weren't floating anymore, they were pounding, dragging her from the place where no one saw her into the center of something too big to fit in her hands. She remembered exactly when it started. The woman's phone call. Her words didn't sound like something a kid should understand, but Diana had learned to listen in layers. Her ears caught the space between words. She heard how people said things when they didn't think anyone else was listening. That was when you knew who they really were. And that woman, Victoria Hale, though Diana didn't know her name yet, was not a mother. Not a friend. Not a person who loved that boy. She was something else. Something cold. Diana hadn't even noticed the carousel at first. It sat on the edge of the park like a forgotten crown, all chipped paint and broken music. But Leo loved it. His little hands reached for the golden horse with its cracked smile. Victoria pulled him away too fast, didn't let him ride. Diana watched that moment hard. The way he looked up at her, confused. The way she didn't even look back. That wasn't what moms did. That wasn't what love looked like. Diana remembered her own mama faintly, braiding her hair on a back porch, humming low like a lullaby. She'd been gone a long time. 1 minute there, the next, gone. No funeral, no goodbye, just a folding chair tipped over, a pair of sandals in the hallway, and voices Diana wasn't supposed to hear whispering about systems and placement and too full. That's how Diana ended up on her own. But she'd kept listening, even when she stopped talking, even when the world turned its back. She listened. That day, after the carousel, Diana crouched behind a rosebush. Victoria was still on the phone, her voice curling like smoke. Yes, it's in his tea. Microdoses, hardly noticeable, but when combined, yes, it accumulates. The words fell like ice cubes down Diana's spine. Victoria's voice hardened. It signs the transfer this week. Once it clears, I disappear. He gets his son back, if he lives. Diana clapped her hand over her mouth. A bee buzzed past her ear, but she didn't move. Not an inch. She didn't know how long she stayed there, long enough for Victoria to hang up, long enough for the car to roll up, glossy and silent like a panther, long enough to see Leo get strapped in, his tiny shoes swinging over the edge of the seat. Diana pressed her forehead to her knees and counted to 10. Then she ran. Not for help. Not yet. She needed more, something real, something they couldn't ignore. People don't listen to girls with frizzy hair and dirty jackets. They don't listen to someone without a home. They don't even slow down. But people looked when you went to places like hospitals. People noticed when you stood near stretchers and alarms and men in ties yelling about cardiac trauma. That's why she waited. That's why she watched. From behind the linen cart, she saw the panic begin. Leo on a stretcher. James Whitaker storming in, shouting at doctors. A nurse running toward the blood lab with trembling hands. And just like that, Diana stepped into the room. It wasn't bravery. It was instinct, like breathing. Now, sitting in a back room with a cup of warm apple juice someone gave her. Diana's fingers still trembled. Her knees bounced beneath the chair. The room smelled like hand sanitizer and lemon cleaner. The window was frosted so she couldn't see out, but she could hear the low murmur of voices beyond the door. She's a child, someone whispered. She knew things no one should have known, said another. Thing that can't be ignored. The door creaked open. Dr. Rose stepped in. She crouched down, not like adults usually did when they wanted to look superior. She made herself level. I need to ask you a few more questions, she said gently. Only if you're okay with that. Diana nodded slowly. You said the woman gave him supplements. Did you see the bottles? No, Diana whispered. But she said they were safe alone, only dangerous together. Do you know how long she's been giving them to him? Diana shook her head. I only saw them today, at the fountain. She told someone on the phone the damage would start showing soon. Dr. Rowe's eyes darkened. Diana reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a page torn from her bird book. On the back she'd scrawled notes with a broken pencil: cream dress, red lipstick, Leo, carousel, Y8, R55, nanny. Dr. Rowe took it, studied it. "You did good," she said quietly. No one had ever told Diana that before, not even once. In the hallway, James Whittaker stood with his arms crossed, eyes locked on the glass of the ICU bay. Inside, Leo lay still, tubes snaking from his arms. His tiny chest rose and fell in slow, rhythmic motions. The talk screen had come back. Several slow-acting agents, barely traceable on their own, but toxic when interacting. Medical mystery solved by a little girl with dirt under her fingernails, and an encyclopedic memory for things adults said when they thought no one was listening. "He saved his life," Nurse Carter muttered. James didn't respond. He just stared. "She knew things only someone who was there could have known," Carter added. "She risked everything." Still, James said nothing. Then finally, "Where is she?" Dr. Rowe motioned to the break room. "Get her something to eat," he said. "I already—" "Real food," James said, "not hospital juice." He turned away. Diana, from inside the room, watched him. She didn't trust him yet. He looked too much like the men who walked past her on the street every day. Clean jacket, nice shoes, too busy, too important. But maybe he was different. Maybe the way he looked at Leo meant something. Dr. Rowe returned with a sandwich from the hospital cafeteria. Turkey, lettuce, a little mustard. Diana peeled it open slowly like it might vanish. She didn't talk as she ate. She barely chewed. But her eyes stayed sharp, locked on every adult who came in and out. Victoria hadn't shown up. Not yet. And that worried her most. "She's going to disappear," Diana finally said. "She planned this. She's done it before." Dr. Rowe looked at her carefully. "How do you know?" "Because she said so." Diana's hands clenched. "He said James Whittaker would be irrelevant, that she'd take everything." In the shadows of her voice something shook, a tremor that came from somewhere far back. Before today, before this week. A memory of someone being taken, of not being believed. "She was so calm," Diana said, "like it was normal." Dr. Rowe nodded. "Sometimes the people who smile the most are the ones you should worry about." Diana looked up sharply. That was the first time she felt someone was actually on her side. And for the first time in a very long time, she allowed herself to believe, just a little, that things might be different now. Code Blue, Pediatrics, Code Blue. The overhead speaker blared as nurses sprinted down the corridor, white soles slapping tile, clipboards crashing against hips. Diana sat frozen on the hallway bench, sandwich crumbs still stuck to her fingers. Her eyes darted toward the ICU bay where a wall of glass separated her from Leo, whose tiny body had begun to jerk violently beneath the tangle of wires. Dr. Rowe was already inside, barking commands. A younger nurse tripped over an IV cord, caught herself and rushed back to the crash cart. The boy's heart monitor spiked, then dropped. Diana felt her own chest tighten. Her fingernails dug into the edge of the bench. She didn't move. Not even when someone shouted her name. She couldn't. Because this was it, the moment that would prove if anyone believed her. Behind the glass, James Whittaker stood stiff, hands clenched at his sides. His knuckles were pale, his jaw locked. He didn't blink, not once. Dr. Rowe's voice cracked through the intercom. "Clear!" The paddles jolted Leo's chest. Silence. Yep, another beep. Steady rhythm. The machines found their song again. Everyone exhaled at once. Except James. He simply bowed his head and stepped away from the glass. Diana finally breathed. She stood slowly, legs stiff, sandwich forgotten on the bench. No one told her to move. No one tried to stop her. It was as if in those moments of chaos she became invisible again, just like she always had been. I held out my hand, speaking slowly. Only now it was different. This time invisibility meant freedom. She walked toward the nurse's station. No one looked at her funny. No one asked why a 7-year-old was wandering the ER alone. That's what shocked her most. They treated her like she belonged. Nurse Carter saw her and knelt down. "He's okay," he said gently. "They stabilized him." Diana nodded. "I knew it was the pills." Carter glanced toward the ICU. The toxicology team confirmed it. The combination triggered acute cardiotoxicity. If you hadn't spoken up, he would have gotten away with it, Diana whispered. And Carter didn't argue. He didn't talk down to her. He just looked at her like she was exactly what she was. A girl who told the truth when no one else would. "Come with me," he said. "Someone wants to talk to you." They passed the waiting room, past vending machines, and a crying toddler with chocolate smeared across her cheeks. Diana kept close to Carter, even though she didn't like staying near adults. Her instinct was always to step back, to duck behind something. But not now. Not after this. Carter led her into a small conference room near the back. It smelled like carpet glue and bad coffee. Inside stood James Whittaker, arms folded, expression unreadable. His suit jacket was gone, sleeves rolled. The billionaire looked like a tired man who hadn't slept in days. Diana stopped in the doorway. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at her, really looked. Not like someone trying to see if she was lying, not like someone confused. He looked at her like she was a person. "You knew before any of us," he finally said. Diana nodded, small and silent. "I didn't believe you," he added, voice heavy. "And still? You told the truth." She looked at the floor. "I didn't do it for you." That caught him off guard. His brow lifted. "No? I did it for Leo." She shifted her weight. He didn't know. He just liked the ducks. He was nice to her. "I watched." He thought she cared. James's eyes softened. He moved to the table, sat down, then gestured to the seat across from him. Diana hesitated. "I won't ask you to trust me," he said, quiet. "But I'd like to hear more. About what you saw. About her." Slowly, cautiously, Diana slid into the seat. "She wore perfume," she began. "The kind that makes your eyes sting, and she always checked her reflection, even in windows, but her smile never reached her eyes. That's how I knew she wasn't real." James leaned forward, elbows on the table. He listened. She kept talking on the phone, always quiet, like she didn't want him to hear. She used words like leverage and thresholds. I didn't know what those meant, but I remembered them. James nodded. "Thresholds. That matches what the lab said. Each pill alone was harmless, but taken together, over time, they passed a toxicity threshold." Diana's voice dropped. She said she'd done it before. James's hands clenched on the table. She told someone she was done babysitting other people's legacies. Said this time she was keeping what she earned. His jaw tightened. "She wanted your company." James rubbed his temples. "She was hired 2 years ago. Vetted. Background check came back clean. She said all the right things. My wife," Leo's mother, died when he was still a baby. "I thought hiring a live-in caregiver would make things easier." Diana tilted her head. "You thought love could be hired?" James blinked. Diana didn't smile when she said it. She wasn't mocking him. She just said it the way you point out a crack in a window. Quiet, matter of fact, and obvious once seen. James didn't answer. The door opened then, and Dr. Rose stepped in. "She's gone," she said. Victoria Hale slipped out before the police could arrive. Her apartment's cleared out, no trace. But the tox screen gives us enough to issue a warrant. She won't get far. James nodded slowly. Dr. Rowe turned to Diana. "You've done something incredible. You saved a life today. Maybe more than one." Diana shifted in her seat, suddenly uncomfortable. Praise always made her feel like a spotlight had landed on her. She didn't know what to do with it. "Where will you go now?" Dr. Rowe asked gently. Diana's eyes dropped. "Same place I always go." Porter, leaning in the doorway, spoke next. "She's not in the system. No parents, no school records. She's been off-grid a long time." "I'm fine," Diana said quickly. James stood. "No, you're not." He looked at her, not with pity, but with purpose. "You're brave, smart, observant, but you shouldn't have to be all that just to survive." Diana didn't reply. He paused, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "This belonged to my wife," he said softly. "It's not for you to wear, not yet, but inside is her favorite quote." He slid the box across the table. Diana opened it. Inside was a folded strip of paper yellowed with time. She read the words aloud, barely a whisper. "The smallest voice can carry the biggest truth." James said nothing, just watched her. Diana closed the box. Her fingers lingered on the lid. She wasn't used to people giving her things that didn't ask for something in return. And for a brief moment, sitting across from the man whose world she'd turned upside down, Diana Witherspoon didn't feel lost. She felt seen. The next morning, Diana woke up in a room that didn't smell like bleach or fear. It smelled like cinnamon and something warm, maybe oatmeal. A little lamp with a flower-shaped shade hummed on the dresser beside the bed. The sheets were soft, clean, even. Her coat had been hung on a hook. The torn pages from her bird book sat neatly stacked on the desk. There was a toothbrush in a cup with her name written on it in marker. She sat up slowly, blinking at the room like it might disappear if she moved too fast. A woman entered quietly, carrying a tray. "Morning," said Dr. Rowe, dressed in jeans and a long gray cardigan, nothing like the scrubs she'd worn the day before. "I figured you might be hungry." Diana watched her set the tray down on the little table by the window. Oatmeal, toast with jam, a glass of apple juice. "I don't take food from strangers," Diana said, her voice barely above a mumble. Dr. Rose smiled gently. "We're not strangers anymore, are we?" Diana didn't answer. "I had a place like this when I was your age," the doctor said, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "After my mom got sick, I lived with an aunt for a while. The first morning she made me pancakes. I wouldn't touch them. Thought she was trying to trick me." Diana finally reached for the toast. Her hands moved slow, guarded. She took a bite. Dr. Rose sat on the edge of the bed. "Mr. Whitaker is downstairs. He wants to speak with you when you're ready." Diana looked up sharply. "Right?" Hammond didn't say. "Just that he wants you to be part of the conversation." The toast caught in Diana's throat a little. She swallowed hard. "Conversation about what?" Rowe hesitated. "Victoria Hale." Diana's shoulders tensed at the name. "She's still out there," Rowe added. "But we found things. In her apartment, files, a bank key, and something strange in a drawer, dozens of IDs." Diana sat very still. "She's done this before," Rowe said quietly, "to other families, other children." Diana lowered the toast. "Are they okay?" "We don't know yet." That made her chest ache. The idea of other kids like Leo hurt slowly, silently, by someone who smiled while doing it. "Deal with it, I want to help," Diana said. "If I can." Rowe nodded. "I think you already have." Downstairs, the hospital's legal counsel had turned one of the small conference rooms into a makeshift war room. Documents lay in neat piles on a long wooden table. A laptop glowed softly in the center. Two men in suits flipped through folders, whispering. At the far end, James Whitaker stood, hands in his pockets, staring out the window at the parking garage. When Diana entered, no one spoke. He stepped in, like a breeze too quiet to notice at first, but the air changed. James turned. "Good morning, Diana." She nodded. Would you like to sit? No, she said. I want to stand. He respected that. Didn't push. Victoria used your son to get to your company, Diana said plainly. That's what you're figuring out now, right? One of the lawyers cleared his throat. It's more complicated than that. She said you'd sign something. Diana cut in, eyes locked on James. Did you? James nodded slowly. 2 weeks ago. A change to the board's voting rights. It gave her proxy authority. That's when the pills started working, she said. No one corrected her, failing inside his job. James looked at the floor. I was tired, distracted. She told me it was routine, legal language I'd signed a dozen times before. I didn't read it close enough. Dinah's lip curled. You trusted her. I did, he said, not defensive, just honest. One of the lawyers stepped forward. There's a trail now. She used a series of shell companies to move money through offshore accounts, but the talk screen, your testimony, and the files she left behind give us enough to bring charges. She'll run, Diana said. She's smart. We're working with federal agents now, the lawyer said. She won't stay hidden long. Diana stepped closer to the table and pointed at one of the folders. What's that one? The lawyer blinked. That's yours. She looked at him, confused. James answered. Your name wasn't in any database, no records, no parents, no birth certificate, nothing. Diana swallowed. I told you, I don't need... You do, James said firmly. Not because it makes you valid. You already are, but because it protects you. When sense distorted, it represents that, doesn't it? Diana blinked hard, but her voice stayed level. What does it say? It's a draft, the lawyer said. A petition. James is filing for temporary guardianship. Her stomach dropped. James saw her expression shift and raised a hand. You don't have to say yes, he said. You don't have to live in my house or call me anything you don't want to, but for now, this gives you a room, a school if you want it, a doctor, safety. Because you didn't just save my son's life, he said. You reminded me what it means to fight for something that matters. Diana looked away. She didn't cry. She never cried in front of people. I don't know how to live in a house, she mumbled. Then we'll learn together. Later that afternoon, Diana stood outside the glass wall of the pediatric ICU. Leo was awake now, his face pale but alert. He held a small stuffed lion in his arms, and a nurse was showing him how to adjust the bed controls. James stood beside her. Keeps asking for you, he said softly. Diana didn't move. I'm not good with kids. James smiled a little. You are a kid. I'm different. Yes, he said. You are. A moment passed. Would it be okay if I just sat with him? She asked. Not talk, just sit. That's more than okay. They entered the room quietly. Leo turned his head, eyes lighting up. He smiled. A real one? Sleepy and warm? Hi, he whispered. Diana nodded, pulled up a chair and sat beside him. They didn't speak after that, but their silence said more than words ever could. She was there, and for the first time in years, Diana Witherspoon didn't feel like she was in someone else's world. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she belonged. 3 days later, the news hit every screen in the country. Former corporate advisor and live-in caregiver Victoria Hale was wanted in connection with the attempted poisoning of a minor, conspiracy to defraud a billion-dollar company, and 6 counts of identity fraud. Photos of her smiling in designer dresses flashed on TV screens beside words like predator, concardist, and master manipulator. Diana watched the headlines unfold from a small couch in the Whitaker guest house. She didn't say much. She rarely did when cameras were involved. but her fingers clenched every time someone called Victoria a rogue employee or disgruntled insider. They didn't understand it. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about Leo. It was about what people chose not to see because it made them uncomfortable. She fooled everyone, James said from behind her, a mug of coffee in his hand. The board, my security detail, even me. Diana didn't look away from the screen. "You didn't fool me." James nodded slowly. No, she didn't. Outside the window, the garden was being trimmed by men in green uniforms. The hedges were sculpted, the paths swept. It all looked neat, controlled. But Diana knew better. Beneath perfect things, rot could grow. Leo was recovering well. The doctor said his body had bounced back faster than expected. But his nights were still filled with shaky breaths and bad dreams. He cried out sometimes, asking for her. Not James, not the nurses, her. Diana didn't know what to do with that. She wasn't used to being needed. One night, when the moon sat high like a silver plate in the sky, Diana crept downstairs and found James in the study, staring at papers with tired eyes. "You can't sleep either?" he asked without looking up. He walked in and stood quietly near the window. "Victoria's voice still plays in my head," she said. Not her words, just her tone, how calm she was. James closed the file. "I know that voice," she added. "Other people talk that way when they think kids don't matter." James set the file aside and looked at her fully. "You've heard it before." "Plenty." Diana walked to the shelf and ran a finger along a row of thick books, finance, business theory, negotiation strategies, but none of them explained how a woman could hurt a child with a smile on her face. "I didn't think anyone would believe me," she said. James nodded. "I didn't at first." She looked over her shoulder. "Why not?" "I wanted the world to be simpler. Believing you meant accepting that someone I trusted was trying to hurt my son. That was too big for me to look at least at first." Diana sat on the arm of the leather chair across from him. Her feet swung, toes barely grazing the carpet. "She said you'd be irrelevant," she murmured. "She said the boy was leverage." James swallowed hard. "I keep hearing that too." They sat in silence. Then James stood and crossed the room to a locked drawer in the desk. He opened it, removed a thin file, and handed it to her. She hesitated. "It's yours," he said. She opened it. Inside were school enrollment forms, medical records, and, at the very top, a birth certificate. It had her name on it. Diana May Witherspoon. Age 7. Mother's name unknown. Father's name unknown. Status reconstructed via emergency guardianship order. Diana stared at it for a long time. "Don't exist," she whispered. "You do now," James replied. She didn't cry. She just nodded and closed the folder carefully, as if it were made of glass. Later that week, a woman arrived at the house. She wore gray slacks and sensible shoes. Her smile was tight but not fake. She introduced herself as Karen Riley from Family Services. James stood next to Diana as Karen knelt to her level. "I've read the reports," Karen said gently. "You've had a difficult journey." Diana said nothing. "I'm here to evaluate your current environment, make sure it's safe. Make sure you're safe." Diana glanced up at James. He didn't speak for her, he just nodded once, like he understood the question she didn't ask out loud. "You can ask me anything," Karen said. "Will I be taken away?" Diana asked, voice flat. Karen looked at James, then back to her. "No, not unless you're in danger, and based on what I've seen, you're not." Diana relaxed slightly. "I've been in places like this before," Karen continued. "Big houses, fancy kitchens, nice people, but sometimes nice people only want to look good, not do good." Diana tilted her head. And what about him? Karen smiled softly. He passed the first test. He listened to you. That night, Diana climbed into bed in her new room. The sheets still felt too clean, the walls too quiet. But something about the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. At the edge of her desk sat the velvet box James had given her. She opened it again, read the tiny paper for the 100th time. The smallest voice can carry the biggest truth. She tucked it under her pillow. The next morning, Leo was wheeled into the sunroom. A nurse pushed his chair while he clutched his stuffed lion. His face lit up when he saw her. "Dee," he called. She ran to him. "Want to see my new game?" he asked, holding up a tablet. "It's about birds. You like birds?" Diana sat beside him, stunned. "How did you know?" Leo giggled. "You had bird drawings. I saw him in the hospital." She blinked. It was such a simple thing. But no one had ever noticed her like that. Not until now. As they played, the nurse whispered something to James, who stood in the corner. He nodded, eyes never leaving the two of them. The legal battle ahead would be messy. The press would dig. Victoria's trial would stretch for months, maybe years. But for now, the boy had his laughter back. And the girl who had once been invisible was now impossible to ignore. A month later, Diana stood at the front gate of Whitaker Academy, staring at the towering stone archway like it might collapse if she breathed too hard. Her fingers gripped the straps of her brand-new backpack. It still smelled like plastic and store tags. Her shoes were white. Her curls were brushed back into a neat bun. She looked like every other kid bustling through the gates that morning. Clean, rested, ready. But inside, she didn't feel like any of them. She felt like a stranger wearing someone else's name. James had insisted on enrolling her in the same private school Leo would attend once he fully recovered. He didn't ask. He simply said, "You've earned more than sidewalks and survival." Diana hadn't responded, but she hadn't said no either. Now here she was. A security guard waved her through. She hesitated, then walked. The halls inside were wide and smelled like lemon polish. Lockers clicked open and shut. Kids laughed in loud looping circles. A few stared at her, but no one said anything. She liked it that way. The classroom door had her name taped to it. "Welcome, Diana Witherspoon." Her desk sat by the window. She slid into it quietly, letting her backpack drop beside her chair. She didn't talk, didn't fidget. Just stared outside at the swaying trees, her heart pounding in a rhythm only she could hear. The teacher entered, a tall woman with kind eyes and a blazer with elbow patches. Her name was Miss Eaton. When she called for attention, the room settled instantly. "We've got someone special joining us today," Ms. Eaton said. Diana shrank in her seat. "This is Diana," the teacher continued. "She's new to our school, but she already knows how to use her voice for what's right. Let's make her feel welcome." There were a few nods, a smile or two. Diana didn't raise her hand, but she whispered something under her breath. "Thanks." After school, a black car pulled up to the curb. James stepped out in a blue sweater and khakis, looking nothing like the man from the business magazines. He looked like someone who forgot what it meant to be afraid and was just now remembering what hope felt like. Diana approached the car slowly. "How was it?" he asked. She shrugged. "Quiet." "Did you like it?" Another shrug. James opened the door for her. "Want to come back tomorrow?" She paused, then nodded. He smiled. On the ride home, Leo's voice crackled through the speaker on the dashboard. He was still recovering in physical therapy, but was calling every afternoon now. "Dee," he shouted, "guess what?" "What?" "I beat the bird game. Got all the feathers, even the red ones." Dinah grinned. "Told you you could." Dad says when I'm better I can come to school too, and we'll be in the same class. Her smile faded a little. Maybe. No, maybe, Leo said. You gotta be there. I don't know anybody else who knows cool stuff like you. James glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She caught his eye but didn't look away. By the time they got home, the sun was dipping behind the roof tiles, casting a golden glow across the yard. Diana stepped out of the car and took a deep breath. The air didn't smell like exhaust or garbage or fear. It smelled like something new. Something clean. Inside, her new room looked just the way she left it. Neatly made bed, her bird pages taped along the wall in careful rows, and the velvet box sitting at the edge of the desk. She walked over and opened it. The little slip of paper was still inside. The smallest voice can carry the biggest truth. She touched the words gently, then looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a girl with deep brown eyes, strong shoulders, and scars no one could see. She saw someone who had lived outside the world for a long time and was finally stepping into it. Downstairs, dinner was being said. Roasted chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes, things she used to only smell from alley windows. Now they were hers too. James handed her a plate. "I have something for you," he said casually, like it wasn't important. But it was. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. The front had her name on it in gold letters, Diana M. Witherspoon. "What's this for?" she asked. "For what's next," he said. "Whatever you want that to be." She opened the journal and flipped through the blank pages. They smelled new, possibility, maybe even peace. That night, after the dishes were cleaned and Leo had fallen asleep on a video call with her still open on the nightstand, Diana sat at her desk and began to write. Not a police report, not an account of lies, not a warning to strangers, but a story. Her story. She wrote about the ducks, the carousel, the stolen glances and whispered threats. She wrote about the hospital lights and the nurse who listened, about a man who almost lost his son, and about a girl who found her voice when no one else would speak up. When she finished the first page, she didn't cry. She smiled. The next morning, she woke to sunshine on her pillow and a soft knock on her door. James peeked in. "You up?" "Almost. Leo's got something for you." She followed him downstairs to find Leo in the kitchen, sitting at the counter, grinning wide. He pushed a small wrapped box toward her. "What's this?" "Open it," he said. She did. Inside was a silver charm shaped like a bird, wings stretched mid-light. On the back, one tiny word was etched in delicate script. Truth. Leo reached for her hand. "You saved me." Diana stared at the charm for a long time. Then she knelt down, hugged him tight, and whispered back, "You saved me, too." And for the first time in her life, she believed it.